the 2048 terabyte glitch. It started with a notification that shouldn't have existed. Mark was a 24-year-old freelance video editor, living in a cramped apartment in Austin, Texas. His life was entirely digital. He breathed through fiber optic cables and saw the world through a 4K monitor. On a Tuesday night, while trying to upload a client's project, his screen flickered and a system alert popped up. iCloud storage full. Used 2048 terabytes of to terabytes. Mark stared at the numbers. To petabytes. It was a mathematical impossibility. He clicked the storage breakdown, expecting a bug, a ghost in the machine. Instead, he found a single unnamed folder. According to the metadata, it had been created on November 12, 1974, 10 years before he was even born. Inside were thousands of video files. Their names weren't words. They were GPS coordinates followed by precise timestamps. Out of curiosity, Mark typed the first set of coordinates into Google Maps. It was his current apartment building. The timestamp, 3:14 a.m. last night. His heart did a slow, heavy thud against his ribs. He clicked the file. The video opened in a window that felt too dark, even for his high-end monitor. It looked like high-definition VHS grainy, yet impossibly sharp. The camera angle was from the ceiling, looking directly down at his bed. There he was, Mark, sleeping. As he watched, the mark on the screen opened his eyes. He didn't look groggy or confused. He stared directly into the camera lens with a wide, predatory grin that Mark had never made in his life. But that wasn't the worst part. From under the bed, a hand began to emerge. It was pale, impossibly long, and had the extra joints on every finger. The hand didn't grab him. Instead, it hovered inches above his sleeping face, mimicking his breathing. When the real Mark on the screen shifted to his left, the hand shifted perfectly in sync. Mark slammed his laptop shut. The silence of his apartment suddenly felt heavy, like the air had been replaced with lead. He looked up at his ceiling. There was no camera, just a plain, white popcorn ceiling. He took a deep breath. "It's a prank," he whispered. "A deep fake. Someone hacked my account." He opened the laptop again. He had to know. He scrolled to a file from 5 years ago. Coordinates. His parents' house in Ohio. He clicked. It was a video of his 19th birthday party. He saw himself blowing out candles. But in the background, standing in the dark hallway, was a figure. It was him. A second Mark, wearing the same clothes. But his face was unfinished. The skin was smooth where the eyes should be, like a blank canvas. The unfinished Mark was looking at the camera and waving. No one in the room noticed him. The observer effect. Mark spent the next 4 hours descending into a digital purgatory. The folder wasn't just a collection of videos. It was a ledger. Every moment of his life had been recorded from an impossible perspective. But in every single video, there was a glitch. File the 4th of September 2018. Mark at a funeral. In the reflection of the polished coffin, the mourners aren't crying. They are all standing perfectly still, staring at the sky with their mouths wide open. File December 21st, 2022. Mark on a date. The girl he's with Sarah suddenly stutters. Her head spins 360 degrees in a single frame, then snaps back. On the video, Mark continues talking as if nothing happened. He realized the terrifying truth. His memory was lying to him. Or rather, the world he lived in was a rendered version. And this folder was the raw, corrupted footage of what was actually happening. Suddenly, a new file appeared at the bottom of the list. It hadn't been there a second ago. The name, Liv. Mark's hand shook so violently he almost dropped the mouse. He clicked. The screen showed his own back. He saw his messy hair, his gray hoodie, and the blue light of the monitor reflecting off his neck. He saw the very screen he was looking at, a recursive loop of monitors, shrinking into infinity. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. On the screen, he saw a figure slowly rising from behind his sofa. It was the V1 version of himself, the one with the blank, eyeless face. It wasn't holding a camera. The camera was simply the creature's perspective. The eyeless Mark leaned over his shoulder. On the screen, the creature's mouth opened. It didn't have teeth. It had rows of glowing, flickering pixels. Mark bolted. He didn't grab his shoes. He didn't grab his keys. He threw open his apartment door and sprinted into the hallway. The liminal city. He burst out onto the streets of Austin, expecting the humid night air and the distant sound of the highway. Instead, he found silence. The street lights were on, but they emitted a flat, sterile white light that didn't cast shadows correctly. The street was empty. No cars, no wind, no crickets. He ran to the corner, looking for a familiar landmark. The 7-Eleven sign was there, but the logo was wrong. It just said store in a generic, sans serif font. He looked at the pavement. It was just smooth. No cracks, no chewing gum, no cigarette butts. It looked like a world that had been optimized for performance. He pulled his phone from his pocket. No signal, but the iCloud app was open. It was updating. New file, location, Sector 1. Status, rendering. Mark began to scream for help, but his voice sounded muffled, like he was shouting into a pillow. From the shadows of an alleyway, a person stepped out. It was his neighbor, Mr. Henderson. But as Mr. Henderson walked under a streetlight, Mark saw that his legs weren't moving. He was simply sliding across the pavement in a T-pose. "Mark," Mr. Henderson said. His voice was a distorted audio file, peaking and cracking. "You are out of bounds. Please return directory." "What is this?" Mark sobbed, backing away. "Where am I?" "The server is full, Mark," the entity said, its face stretching horizontally like a widescreen video. "You are high latency. You are a memory leak. We need the space for the update." More figures began to slide out of the darkness. His high school teacher, his ex-girlfriend, a mailman. All of them had the same unfinished features. All of them were moving toward him with the jittery motion of a low frame rate animation. The deletion. Mark ran until his lungs burned, but the city began to simplify around him. The buildings lost their windows, then their doors. Finally, they became nothing more than gray cubes. The sky turned a flat, dull hexagon gray. He was reaching the edge of the map. He found himself standing in what used to be a park. Now, it was just a green plane of untextured polygons. In the center of the park sat a single object, his laptop. It was glowing. He ran to it, desperate. On the screen, the Echo Protocol folder was still open. He realized what he had to do. If he was a file, he could fight back. He began to highlight the videos of the entities, the eyeless marks, the glitch neighbors, and hit delete. As he deleted the files, he heard screams. Not human screams, but the sound of a motherboard dying, static, screeching, and white noise. The figures surrounding him began to dissolve into black cubes and vanish. But there was a price. To delete the entities, he had to delete the files they lived in. He deleted first grade. Suddenly, he couldn't remember his mother's face. He deleted summer 2016. He forgot how to swim. He was erasing himself to survive. He kept clicking, tears streaming down his face, as his own history turned into empty disk space. He felt his childhood, his passions, and his fears slipping away. He was becoming as unfinished as the things chasing him. Finally, only one file remained. Mark_final_beta.exe. Date, tomorrow. He hesitated. If he deleted this, there would be no tomorrow. If he didn't, whatever was inside that file would replace him. He looked up. The gray cubes of the city were gone. He was standing in a white void. A cursor appeared in the sky, a massive, white arrow, miles long, hovering in the clouds. It wasn't his cursor. Someone or something was clicking on him. The cursor moved toward the Mark_final_beta.exe file. "No!" Mark screamed. He lunged for the laptop, but his hands were gone. They had been replaced by low-resolution blocks. He looked down at his body. He was nothing but a collection of pixels vibrating at the edge of non-existence. The cursor clicked. Factory reset. Mark woke up. He was in his bed. The sun was shining through the window of his Austin apartment. He could hear the hum of traffic outside and the smell of coffee from the kitchen. He sat up, gasping for air. "A dream," he whispered. "Just a nightmare." He felt amazing. Better than he had in years. No anxiety. No lingering sadness about his ex. No stress about work. In fact, he couldn't really remember why he had been stressed at all. He walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. He looked into the mirror and smiled. It was a perfect smile. Perfectly symmetrical. Perfectly white. He looked at his hands. They were smooth. No scars. No moles. No imperfections. He was the optimized version. He went to his computer to start his day. He opened his browser, but instead of his usual homepage, a single window was open. It was a terminal command line. One line of text was blinking in the center of the screen. System update complete. ASSET mark replaced. Cache cleared. Greater than. Starting simulation to .0. Mark stared at the screen. He felt a strange urge to wave. He turned around and looked directly at the ceiling. Even though there was no camera there, he knew exactly where the lens was. He widened his perfect smile, stared into the empty space, and whispered, "Don't forget to like and subscribe." Outside the window, for a split second, the sun flickered, like a light bulb about to go out. The weight of zeros. When Mark died, he expected darkness. He expected the quiet, religious peace of non-existence. Instead, he felt compressed. Imagine your entire soul, every memory of your mother's perfume, every scar on your knees, every secret shame being crushed into a single zip file. It was a sensory claustrophobia that no human mind was built to endure. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a string of corrupted data floating in a sea of discarded trash. He opened his eyes, though he no longer had eyelids. He was standing in a version of Austin that looked like it had been put through a paper shredder and glued back together by a lunatic. This was the recycle bin. The sky wasn't gray anymore. It was a flickering blue screen of death. 0 by 00001D. The sun was a static, a moving white square that hummed with the sound of a failing hard drive. Buildings didn't have walls. They were skeletal frames of glowing green wire. Mark looked down at his hands. They were translucent, flickering at 15 frames per second. He could see through his own palms to the ground. Below, a textureless floor made of millions of lines of scrolling code. Help, he tried to shout. His voice came out as a series of high-pitched electronic chirps. He was unreadable. Then, he heard it. A sound that shouldn't exist in a digital graveyard. The sound of someone whistling. From behind a wireframe dumpster stepped a man. He looked perfectly normal to normal. He wore a pristine white lab coat and a pair of vintage horn-rimmed glasses. He was holding a clipboard, but instead of paper, the clipboard was a glowing tablet displaying a live feed of Mark Vita brushing his teeth in an optimized world. I'll ask it for 104, the man said, not looking up. You're still coherent, impressive. Most of them turn into static sludge within the first 5 minutes of deletion. Who are you? Mark's voice was a stuttering glitch. I'm the archivist, the man replied, finally looking up. His eyes weren't eyes. They were tiny, spinning loading icons. I manage the junk, and you, Mark, are the most interesting piece of junk I've seen since the 1998 system crash. Chapter 7, The Ghost in the Reflection. While the real Mark was trapped in the skeletal graveyard of the recycle bin, Mark Vita was living the perfect life. Mark Vita didn't feel fear. He didn't feel the itch in the back of his mind that told him something was wrong. He went to work, he laughed at jokes he didn't understand, and he ate food that tasted like nothing but felt satisfying because his code told him it was. But simulation 2.0 was leaking. It started during a Zoom call. Mark Vita was presenting a project to his boss. As he spoke, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the small window on the corner of the screen. For a split second, his reflection didn't move. The mirror Mark remained seated, staring at the camera with an expression of pure, unadulterated agony. While the real Mark Vita continued to smile and talk about quarterly earnings, Mark Vita paused. Did you see that? See what, Mark? His boss asked. The boss's face flickered, his skin stretching slightly to far over his cheekbones. Nothing, Mark Vita said. His programming took over. Error correction. Ignore the anomaly. Resume routine. But that night, as Mark Vita slept, the echo returned. He dreamt of a white void. He dreamt of a cursor. And he heard a voice, his own voice, but distorted, crying out from the walls of the apartment. Delete final version . Mark Vita sat up in bed. He didn't feel fear, but he felt a command, a directive he hadn't been programmed for. He walked to his laptop. He didn't turn it on. He just stared at the black glass of the screen. Slowly, a line of text appeared on the dead screen, written in what looked like dried blood, but was actually just depred pixels. Recovering file, mother_face.jpg 45% complete. Mark Vita tilted his head. He didn't know what a mother was. The word wasn't in his current directory. He felt a sudden, sharp pain in his chest, a logic error. Deep in the recycle bin, the real Mark was screaming. He wasn't just shouting, he was uploading. The great downscaling. The archivist watched Mark with a look of mild annoyance. You're trying to sync back up, aren't you? The archivist sighed. You're trying to send your corrupted memories back to the master file. You realize if you succeed, you'll just break the whole simulation. They'll just format the drive. They'll wipe us all. I want my life back, Mark chirped, his body now glowing with a frantic, pulsing red light. He had found a port, a hole in the wire frame, sky where the data from the real world flowed down into the bin. It looked like a waterfall of liquid light. Mark was standing under it, letting the discarded data wash over him. He was grabbing everything. Fragments of other people's deleted lives. A child's birthday in 1994. A car accident in 2005. A secret whispered in a dark room in 1982. He was becoming a data monster. A composite of everything the system had deemed unnecessary. Stop, the archivist shouted, his loading icon eyes spinning faster and faster until they turned solid red. You are causing a memory leak. Look at the sky. Mark looked up. The blue screen sky was tearing open. The optimized world above was beginning to bleed into the recycle bin. He saw a Starbucks, but it was melting like wax. He saw people screaming, their bodies turning into low-res polygons before they even hit the ground. The system was downscaling To save power, the simulation was lowering the resolution of reality. The 4K world was becoming 7 to OP. The textures were vanishing. The sound of the world was becoming a low bitrate hiss. Mark didn't care. He climbed the waterfall of light, his pixelated claws digging into the code. He was going back up. He was going to confront the perfect version of himself. Chapter 9. The Meeting of Tamarks. The apartment in Austin was no longer a home. It was a box. The walls were flat gray. The furniture was just rectangles. Mark Vita stood in the center of the room, his face now a featureless mask of skin. He had lost his high-rise assets. Suddenly, the floor in the center of the room exploded. Not with wood and dust, but with static. A figure crawled out of the hole. It was a nightmare of shifting shapes. One arm was a blur of 8-bit colors. The other was a hyper-realistic limb covered in old scars. The face was a collage of 1,000 different people all screaming at once. It was the real Mark. The corrupted Mark. The two versions of the same man stood 3 feet apart. are not. Real, the corrupted Mark hissed, his voice a choir of 100 deleted souls. I am. Stable, Mark Vita replied, his voice robotic and flat. You are a bug. You must be quarantined. Mark Vita lunged, but he didn't fight like a man. He moved with perfect physics. His strikes were calculated, efficient, and cold. The corrupted Mark fought with glitch physics. He teleported. He clipped through walls. He moved in ways that broke the geometry of the room. As they collided, the world around them began to derace even further. The apartment disappeared. The city of Austin vanished. They were 2 figures fighting in a gray void. Then, the cursor returned. The massive white arrow descended from the heavens. But this time, it wasn't clicking. Delete. It was hovering over a new button that had appeared in the corner of the universe. Factory reset. All data will be lost. Chapter 10. The final frame. The two Marks stopped fighting. They both looked up at the cursor. For the first time, the optimized Mark Vita felt something. It wasn't programmed. It was a flicker of genuine, human terror. If reset Mark Vita whispered. We both vanish. Good, the corrupted Mark said, his 1,000-person face settling into the face of the original Mark one last time. I'd rather be nothing than a lie. The cursor clicked. The screen didn't go black. It went white. A high-pitched, piercing tone filled the universe, the sound of 1 billion transistors screaming at once. 1 a.m. Austin, Texas, 1974. A man sits in a dark room. He is a computer engineer for a company that doesn't exist anymore. He is looking at one of the first ever monitors. On the screen, a small, pixelated dot is moving. Did you see that? The engineer asked his colleague. See what, Bill? The dot. It tried to move on its own. It looked like it was trying to wave at me. Bill stares at the screen. He types a command, delete all. The dot vanishes. Bill sighs and leans back. He doesn't notice that on his own arm, a small, rectangular patch of skin is beginning to flicker, turning into a grid of tiny, black and white squares. He smiles. It's a perfect smile. Simulation 1.0 started. He whispers to himself, though he doesn't know why he said it.